Okay. Good afternoon, students, friends. First of all, I would like to congratulate you for this 2020 prelims, which has been a much awaited session. It has been almost a 4 months of delay. So let's just try to be optimistic with this COVID situation. Like we have got plenty much of time for us to do our preparation. So how did you find this year paper? Was it like a more of a difficult? Was it more moderate? I would say the paper was somewhat inclined towards more of a moderate way, the way how it was written it down, and it was good. So stay positive. Let's just forget about it. How many you have attempted or how many you might have gone wrong. I would like to say start up with your mains preparation. Take a 2 to 3 days of break. Start with your mains preparation because that is going to benefit you if you or mostly you will be clearing your prelims. If not, for the next year prelims, you this is going to anyways help you down. So coming up with the geography prelims 2020, before we go and try to find the solutions and the analytical part, let's just try to understand how the paper was really set in the light of geography. Is it was completely pinpointing it towards only geography questions? Was it more inclined towards geography coming up with the environmental part? Or is it more of a current affairs seeking up from the geographical lens? So if you want to understand this year particular paper, it was somewhat the other way trying to make you understand that there are few questions, almost like 8 to 9 questions, which were absolutely coming up from the geographical part. So we have got like a pure geography area, what we cover up. Some parts were overlapping with geography plus environment part, where we cannot really distinguish whether it's an environmental question or it's a geographical question. And few of them are coming up geography clubbing up with the current affairs and also overlapping with science and technology as well. So this is for you to understand geography was mixing with the current affairs and this was something missing with the science and technology. So over here in today's class, we'll be trying to analyze and trying to find out what are the pure geographical questions which are coming up and what are the questions which are coming up as a part of current affairs and also clubbing up with the science and technology. So let's just get started. What we are seeing is the set C in today's class. And one of the first question, in fact, in the set C is coming up from a direct geographical question. Now this is somewhat clubbed with the current affairs as well. Now as the question says, what are the advantages? Okay, what are the advantages of fertigation in agriculture? Now, to particularly answer this question, you need to know what do you mean by what the word fertigation. As the word itself speaks, you have got fertilizers, and gation comes from the word irrigation. So fertilizers are mixed up with the irrigation, and that's how they are being taken forward. So what are the kind? Okay, you have got 4 different points. Select the correct answers using the following. So over here you have got the correct that was supposed to be said. And the first point says controlling the alkalinity of irrigation water is possible. Means what we need to understand over here is that whenever the fertilizers are mixed up, they are creating more of an acidic kind of an environment. So if the plant soil is more alkaline in nature and this fertigation is mixing up with alkaline, you can get a more higher amount of pH. So to correct the excess amount of alkalinity, we get to see fertigation really benefits us. What next? Efficient application of fertigation through rock phosphate and all the other phosphate fertilizers. Look at the word all over here. Now we need to have some kind of alertness whenever the word all comes. Whenever extreme kind of word comes up, you need to say that whether the statement needs a re-verification or not. So first of all, there is something like an all that comes up over here. And secondly, right after that, look at the word rock phosphates. If you read a little bit about rock phosphates, we know that it is one of the insoluble mineral which is being added. So whenever you're mixing up rock phosphate with water, it is something that does not really dissolves. So from the second point, we understand that rock phosphates does not dissolve in water, so it cannot be a part of fertigation. Now continuing with this second point, that let's just try to see with one right and two wrong, let's just try to understand what explanation are we going to get. So over here 2 is present, so this cannot be the answer. Over here 2 is present, this cannot be the answer. And so tell you this. So with this elimination method, we get to understand 1, 3, 4 is the right answer. So looking up increased availability of the nutrients to the plant is possible. Certainly, yes. If you add fertilizers, it is going to present in the surface areas. Whereas if you add the minerals or the fertilizers with water, a more deeper level of penetration would be present up. So yes, increased availability of the nutrients of the fertilizers to the plant roots because it has dissolved with the water. So that is one of the advantages of fertigation. Reduction in the leaching of the chemical nutrients. Yes, certainly when the chemicals react with the surface areas, you have got a higher amount of leaching. So with this fertigation, there will be a reduction in the amount of leaching as well. So with this particular fertigation, we understand the benefits is somewhat the alkalinity could be controlled, the availability of the nutrients is going to be increased up, the absorption will increase from 60% to 85% in the case of fertigation. Reduction in the amount of leaching will also take place, but we need to remember phosphates will not dissolve within the case. So 2 makes it wrong. So over here we can understand what exactly fertigation speaks of. The practice of supplying crops. Just take up a read on these. One particular paragraph will make you understand this complete preliminary question. Moving to the next, you have got consider the following minerals that is being there. Okay. Consider the following minerals. You have got some list of minerals. What is the question that is trying to say? In India, which of the above minerals are considered to be as the major minerals? Now over here, we have got some of them minerals which are coming up from the coal. Some of them are metallic minerals. Some of them are like non-metallic minerals. So there's nothing like a guess that you can create over here. Right now, just try to see bentonite. Some people might be knowing, some people might not be knowing. Chromite. If you look at the word chromite, it directly says it's one of the major minerals what you're having up. So over here, try to see kyanite and sillimanite. Now these minerals are some of the way written up within the case of Indian Express. They're also present within the case of in Hindu. But what exactly are we going to benefit is that what does the government try to say about these minerals? If you look up over here, chromite, it is present in the case of 2. In the case of 2 it is present, in the case of 234 it is also present. So over here let us talk about kyanite and sillimanite. If you look up at these different minerals over here, we have having some of the major minerals, we are having some of the non-metallic minerals as well. If you look over here, we have got kyanite which is present over here, we have got the kyanite which is present, we have got the sillimanite which is also present up. So over here we understand the different minerals. Looking up at this question, what are the different minerals which are present up? So as we see, chromite is also one of the major minerals, kyanite is also one of the major minerals, and so does the sillimanite. So the right answer over here is 2, 3, 4. Bentonite is one of the minor minerals which has been present up. So over here you need to remember the chart which has been given up by the government. Moving to the next, with reference to ocean mean temperature, which of the following statement is or are correct? Now, ocean mean temperature OMT is one of the ways in which we try to predict the monsoon. Apart from this, there are different other earlier methods that was used up. For example, SST, sea surface temperature, was also used up for our understanding. But what does the scientists say? For example, in the recent discovery in the year end of 2018, in the earlier 2019, the scientists of IIT Pune, they come up and they try to explain is that SST is one of the good ways, but a more better way is that we can predict the Indian monsoon with the help of ocean mean temperature. So just before we find out about OMT, just try to read what exactly the sentence saying. Ocean mean temperature is measured up to a depth of 26 degrees Celsius isotherm, which is 129 meters in the southwestern Indian Ocean during the month of January to March. Now, in the current affairs, ocean mean temperature measuring up in the month of January to the March when we have got summers within the case of lower southern ocean. At that time, we have got summers. So we have read these lines. Ocean mean temperatures collected during January and March can be used in assessing whether the amount of rainfall in monsoon will be less or more than the certain long-term mean. So OMT is used for finding what would be the level of monsoon that is going to come up. So certainly yes, 2 is making you understand that the Indian monsoon could be predicted. Now in the first part, you have something like a conceptual area. You need to something memorize over here is that what exactly OMT is. It is something that is measuring with the sea surface temperature, but not just the surface, but somewhat near through to the depth of 130 meters. We get to see where the isotherm is coming up. So this isotherm is this completely, it is being measured up, and with that temperature analysis, we can predict the monsoon is going to get harder or it's going to get more and more weaker. So we understand by this factual area By looking at the definition, OMT is measured within the case of southwest of the Indian Ocean in the month of January. Certainly that statement is right. What is the function? Why do we check OMT? It is because that particular OMT will help you to analyze the amount of rainfall or the amount of what monsoon gradation will be coming up. So the second statement is also right. So with this, which of the following are the correct statement? We are having both one and the two, both of them are correct. Now looking up at this definition, just try to look at the reference areas we are having. Sea surface temperature is routinely used for predicting whether the total amount of rainfall. So the earlier method for predicting the monsoon was with the help of sea surface temperature. But right now what we are trying to go is for the ocean mean temperature, which has been developed by the IIT and meteorological department. It is somewhere like a thermal energy which is being checked for January to month of March, can predict the monsoon. And over here we did not really have the reference point that it is being used for the Indian Ocean in the southwest direction. So over here we understand is that what is OMT? It is nothing but the check of the temperature within the case of southwest of the Indian Ocean, and parallel to that it will help you to predict how the monsoon is going to come up in the month of June. So this is a 6 month prediction. It is a long term prediction for the monsoonal areas. Moving to the next, we are having up the fourth question. Just read the question. With reference to chemical fertilizers in India, consider the following statements. So the question is trying to say something about the chemical fertilizers. What exactly is it trying to say? Now the question reads up, at present, the retail price, at present, the retail price of chemical fertilizers is market driven and not administered by the government. Now look up at this sentence and just try to think up in a logical way, is that why would government try to bring a certain kind of a regulation which is not going to really affect it down? Okay, see, now look up at the first question. We understand is that if you see the chemical fertilizers, can you really analyze why would the government try to bring it against the regulation? Certainly not. Now, as the question says that it is has been kept open in the retail market and it has not been kept up within the case of what? Within the case of governmental regulatory bodies. Certainly this statement seems to be wrong, because the government will not really bring up the chemical fertilizers being kept in the open market. The government will create a certain kind of a regulation, and this not makes the statement to be wrong. So what do we understand the first statement being wrong? So A is wrong and the D is also wrong. Looking up over here, ammonia, which is an input of the urea, is produced from the natural gases. Now, as we see, ammonia is one of the byproduct that has been created from the urea, and at the same time, these particular is an extraction from the ONG companies, from the oil and natural gases. We get to see the ammonia is being basically being extracted. So somewhat this is being right. At the same time, sulfur, which is a raw material for a phosphoric acid and fertilizers, is also a byproduct of the oil refineries. So these oil refineries is also trying to designate that ammonia is basically being extracted from the oil companies itself. So over here, 2 is a right statement because it is coming up from the natural gases and it is one of the input which has been used up. And sulfur is also trying to make you understand that sulfur is also being extracted from the oil refineries areas. So 2 and 3 is the right answer what we get to see. So the first is being wrong with this, 2 was absolutely right, and 3 was basically the deciding factor whether you're going to go right with this particular statement or not. Now looking up at this reference, see, almost all the elements sulfur is being produced as a byproduct. We get to see they are coming up from the natural gases, what we get to see, and from the petroleum industries. So with this, we have an idea regarding where sulfur is being produced from. And at the same time, we have an idea how ammonia is one of the byproducts which are coming up from the urea. Moving to the third simple question, pretty much factual, was mostly in the news. If you take up a look at Z News, ABP News, this question could have been addressed even by those particular viewers as well. So where exactly do you find the Siachen glaciers? It's saying that it is found in the east of Aksai Chin, that's one, east of Leh, north of Gilgit, north of Nubra Valley. Now, if you look at the map, basically, see, What is the first statement? Where do you find the Siachen glaciers? If you see, they are found in the east of the Aksai Chin. Now, this particular region, the left edge, what we are having up, it is the Aksai Chin. It is being present in the east of Aksai Chin, what we are getting up. So, verily, in this area, do we have? Certainly, this will make it to be wrong. On the other side, we have got Siachen in the east of Leh region. We are having the Leh region somewhere over here. We are having Leh region over here. In the east, do we have? Certainly not. This particular statement is also to be wrong. Do we have in the north of the Gilgit region? So over here we have got the Gilgit region. Do we have the Aksai Chin in the north? Certainly that is also to be wrong. Do we have in north of the Nubra Valley? Nubra, it is one of the tributaries of the Brahmaputra river. So sorry, not of the Brahmaputra, but of the Indus river. We get to see over here you have got the Nubra. So in the Nubra valleys, right to the north, you have got the Siachen glaciers. So over here, where do we have got the Siachen glaciers? It is present in the north of the Nubra Valley. Nubra, one of the important tributaries of the Indus River, which makes it so simple. You cannot really do any mistake for these questions. Next, you're having a question regarding the jet stream. This is an NCRT based question, simple question, and I don't think any kind of interpretation is being required. If you have gone through with the NCRTs, you should be able to address it down. Now, what really this question is trying to say? Consider the following statements. Jet streams occur in the northern hemisphere only. What do you mean by the word jet streams? Jet streams are there within the case of, see, uh, where do you find the word? Where do you find jet streams? It is present within the case of upper altitudinal region. Now, what do we understand is that in the higher altitudinal region, we have got strong horizontal wind forces which are moving up down, which are called to be as the jet stream. There is no really any kind of a peculiarity that it is going to present only in the case of northern hemisphere. They are present in the northern hemisphere. They are present even in the case of southern hemisphere. So the first statement says jet streams are seen in the case of northern hemisphere. That makes it to be the wrong. It is present in the north as well as in the case of south. Only some cyclones develop an eye. Basically, eye is the center of a cyclone that has been present up. So we get to see this eye is basically produced due to the low pressure area. So we see that with this low pressure, we are having a kind of a lower temperature. We are having this low temperature and this low pressure which is being created. Now these tropical cyclones are the one that produces an eye. So when the word says only some cyclones develop an eye, that statement makes it to be the right, because tropical cyclones are the one which are producing the eye, whereas the temperate cyclones, where we have got high pressure in the centers and low pressure in the vicinities, they do not develop an eye. So in this way we get to see tropical cyclones are the one that produces, which makes this statement to be right, this statement to be wrong. Now look at this particular. The temperature inside the eye of a cyclone is nearly 10 degrees lesser than that of the surrounding areas. Now, whenever a cyclone is being created, we have got the center, that is the eye. The surrounding areas are having relatively higher pressure, because over here you have got the low pressure. Now, when they have got low pressure and the surrounding areas have got higher pressure, we are having rain bearing cloud winds around it, and there is an increase in the amount of rainfall in these areas. When there is an increase in the amount of rainfall, when the moisture content is more higher, there is more coolness over here and there is a more settleness. Relatively, this low pressure area is going to be more hotter. Obviously, with that hotness, the low pressure was created, and with this coolness, you have got a higher pressure over here. Second statement says the temperature inside the eye of a cyclone is nearly 10 degrees lesser than that of the surrounding. So this temperature is more lesser than the surrounding areas. So what do we understand over here is that the temperature is more lesser over here, and that's why the low pressure is being created. So what do we understand over here is that 2 and 3. So looking up, 1 is certainly being wrong. 1 is certainly being wrong. This is 2. So you have got 2, 2 and 3 only. So the right answer is 2 and 3. Certainly both of the statements are right. So you're having the option to be B. Moving to the next question. See, what is or are the advantages of zero tillage in agriculture? What do you mean by the word zero tillage? before a farmer goes and he tries to create some kind of a dug hole, he's trying to create a certain way of like a bump. So whenever the particular area of soil is being removed, that is called a tillage. The word zero tillage means no tillage. Another word for that is no tillage or nil tillage as well. So with no movement of that particular soil areas, our zero tillage is going to create an advantage. Let's just read what exactly the points are trying to say it down. See, zero tillage basically means sowing of the wheat is possible without the burning of the residue of the previous crop. See, we get to see that whenever within the case of Punjab and Haryana region, when they're having the winter crops or also called to be the rabi crops, we understand verily at that time is that they burn up the residue, and that residue ash which is being left is basically is being used as a soil. So with that, on that burnt residue, they try to grow up the next rabi crops. So it is telling that with the help of zero tillage, that burning could be stopped. Certainly not. That burning has to take place, because that is the concept of there is no tillage in it. So sowing of the wheat is possible without burning of the residue of the previous crop. No, basically burning will take place with that burnt ashes only, that is becoming like a concept of no use of fertilizers, and with that no use of fertilizers, no tillage is coming up. So the first statement is wrong. Second state, without the need for nursery of without the need of nursery of rice and saplings, direct planting of the paddy seeds in the wet soil is possible. So for the paddy cultivation, if the tillage has not been done, if you have seen how the rice crop is being grown up, there is a paddy cultivation that takes place in the amount of water we go, and inside we try to put up the rice saplings. So what it is telling that with no tillage, we can directly sow the seeds into the soil rather than the paddy. So the word paddy says that without water can we grow? Certainly rice. Without water, can we grow rice within it? Certainly not. So we understand over here is that without water, paddy cultivation cannot take place. You cannot directly put it in the wet soil. You have to put it in the paddy water. So without the need for nursery of rice saplings, direct planting of paddy seeds can be done in the wet soil? Certainly not. Carbon sequestration. Okay, let's just try to understand with that 1 and 2 being wrong. Can we find out? Yes, 1 and 2, which is wrong. So this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Directly you get the answer is C. Carbon sequestration in the soil is possible. So we understand is that with the help of particular zero tillage, carbon sequestration is going to take place, because whatever carbon is there in the open atmosphere, it can get settled with the agricultural field, and it can get within the case of stored within the case of soil. So carbon sequestration is also possible. So the right answer what you're having is the only 3. Now look up at the advantages that was given up. So with this important reference material, we're having what are the advantages of zero tillage. Just take a look up at this, and you're having a particular point that says how it is going to help you within the case of carbon sequestration. The fifth point is for you to understand is that the only C is the right answer. It helps into reduce of the carbon. So greenhouse gases are going to get within the case of agriculture. See, according to India's national policy on biofuels, which of the following can be used as a raw material for the production of biofuels? Now, the question says how the biofuels are going to get produced. What is a particular scope that how we can extract the biofuels? Now, the government has said that there are different gradations of biofuels. We have got the first generation, second generation, third, and the fourth. Within the case of second generation, they have adopted even some of the crops which are being produced, or some of the waste products from the vegetation can be used for production of the biofuels. Mean a fuel is being produced from a biological way. So we get to see that how. So what are the different means from which the biofuels could be produced? This is what the government was trying to say. So over here in the reference material, we are having different scopes from where exactly the biofuels could be extracted. Now we have got a particular list that is trying to speak it down. Now, before you go and solve this one particular question, you need to remember what did the government say. Government has said that any kind of an agricultural waste that is being produced, that could be used, some crops that could be used, and second time, sugar based crops which are being there, sugar cane, sugar beet, sugar rum, sugar boot, all of this could be used up. So over here, one of the different ways, for example, cassava, that is certainly being used. Damaged wheat grains, isn't it? A damaged crop could be used up. We get to see what else. You have got rotten potatoes. It has got some amount of sugar which has been present up. Sugar beet, that is also being used. So over here we get to see that 1, 2, 5, and 6. Groundnut seeds are not being used because they are one of the type of pulses. Pulses have got limited amount of water. With that least amount of water which is being present over there, we get to see it is not suitable for production of the biofuels. So what we understand is that 1, 2 is right, 3 is totally wrong, fourth, which for which we are confused, fifth is right because it has got sugar in it, and sixth has got the sugar beet. Let us just try to see what are the important areas. So we know 1, 2, 5, and 6 are being wrong. So the first itself says that 1, 2, 5, and 6 is being there. 3, this is being wrong, 3 is being wrong, and 3 is being wrong. So with this particular elimination and with limited knowledge, what did the government say regarding the biofuels? We can eliminate the right answer. Eliminate the wrong answers and get the right answer. So over here, look up at this. What is the particular scope that we're having up? The scope for raw material is that policy expands in that we are allowing the use of sugarcane, sugar containing material. Look at this. Sugar containing material is being used. Example, you have all the sugar containing material, and then you have got the damaged food crops or food grains that are being used, wheat, broken rice, potatoes, etc. So in this way, we are having the right answer to be 1, 2, 5, 6. See. The next question is saying, with reference to the pulse production in India, consider the following statement. What exactly it is saying? First is black gram can be cultivated as both Kharif and Rabi crop. Next question says, green gram alone accounts for nearly half of the pulse production. Now, let's just imagine is that have you anytime heard about green gram is constituting to be the 50% of it? Have you ever heard anywhere 50% of the pulses is coming up in the form of green gram? Certainly not. That particular second statement is wrong. The third statement says in the last 3 decades, while the production of Kharif pulses has increased, means Kharif, you're talking about the summer crops that has increased and the production of Rabi pulses has decreased. Now take a look at this particular statement. It is telling that the summer crops have able to produce more, the winter crop has produced able to produce less. Now in the case of global warming, what do we see? The warming temperature is certainly being increased. Now over here, the winter season has become less wintry and the summer season has become more summery, and with that ineffective summer season, the rainfall is getting hampered because of that. So what do we see? Rainfall is getting affected, so the summer crops is getting less, the winter crops is getting more. And the statement is telling the opposite. It is telling the summer crops is increasing, wrong. And it is also telling the winter crop is decreasing, wrong. Winter crop is increasing, summer crop is decreasing. So the third statement is also wrong. Second statement is smartly it can be understood that the green gram is not the 50% of the pulse production. So 2 and 3 is being wrong. We understand that the first statement is being right. Which of the following statement given is or are correct? So the answer is A, what you're having. Going to the next. Next, it is saying that look up, read the complete paragraph. The crop is subtropical in nature. It has given 4 different types of crop. The crop is subtropical in nature. A hard frost is injurious to it. It requires at least 200. Look at these statements. It requires at least 210 frost free days and 50 to 100 centimeter of rainfall. All the points which are important for you to focus upon, I'm underlining it. 210 frost free days, 50 to 100 centimeters of rainfall for its growth, a light, well drained soil capable of retaining moisture. We don't want rainfall. We only want 50 to 100 centimeter of rainfall, and the soil should be in such a manner that it should retain the moisture in an ideally suited for the cultivation. Now, we understand by this statement is that they are talking about a crop which does not require higher amount of rainfall. It requires somewhere about 50 to 100 centimeter. Second, they want 210 frost free days, means a good amount of summer should be present up. We need something like a summer based crop, lesser amount of rainfall, and the soil should be able to retain moisture, means the soil is more clay in its nature. So what do we understand is that such areas where the rainfall is so much less has to be somewhere in the interior of the land. It cannot be in the coastal areas of the India, because these coastal areas will not have 50 to 100 centimeter. It is going to have somewhere between 100 to 200 centimeter of rainfall, or 200 plus. So with this, what do we understand is that this is not something like a coastal crop. So what do we understand? Look at the tea. Tea has got somewhere 250 plus amount of rainfall. So tea is the wrong answer. Sugarcane also requires high amount of rainfall, and we also need larger amount of orographic regions as well. So sugarcane is also not the right answer. Jute, where do you find the jute? It is seen in the West Bengal region. So that is also not, it's not a coastal crop. So with this elimination, we understand cotton is the one which is growing up on the black soil. It is free, frost free for 210 days, and eventually we get to see 50 centimeter of rainfall is being produced up within the case of interior region of the Maharashtra, and even in the case of Gujarat. So the right answer what you are having is cotton. So moving to the next. With reference to the current trends in the cultivation of sugarcane, find out what the following. Now, this is not somewhat like a direct question. It is for you to interpret. A more greater level of understanding is being required. So, regarding the cultivation of sugar cane, how exactly do we understand it? Now, look at the statement. A substantial saving in the seed material is being made when the bud chip is settling and raised with the nursery and the transplant in the main field. Now, what do we understand by this particular statement is that if you know how the sugarcane is being produced, if you look at this one particular scenario, the way how sugarcane is being produced is that once you sow the seeds and the sapling comes out, it grows. And basically, when it reaches one particular height, we try to eliminate that one particular area. Once that elimination is take place from that remaining sapling, the second sugarcane agriculture is being produced. So what it is saying that the substantial saving in the seed material is done when the bud chip settlings are raised in nursery and transplanted in the case of main field. Now we see that the production of the sugarcane is not by the transplantation, but once you grow the sugarcane, once you grow the sugarcane, the saplings are not required for 4 to 5 years. So there is no amount of transportation which is being taken place. So the first statement is telling that sugarcane is being transported in the form of a saplings, that is not being taken place. Once the seed has been placed up, it will remain for a span of 4 to 5 years. So we do not have that one particular kind of a benefit in the case of a sugarcane. So the first statement itself is wrong. So understanding from this one particular statement how sugarcane is being grown, we understand that first statement is being wrong. Let's just try to analyze based on that one answer. Can we find out one is right? Certainly, which of the following statement yes are correct? So we see that one is being wrong. One is being wrong. You have got two, over here two, three, four. So three is being right. Let's just find out the second statement over here. When direct planting of the set is being done, the germination percentage is better with single budded and is being compared with the sets of many buds. Now we understand that within the case of when the sugarcane is being, there are many different kinds of buds that are being taken place. Usually what we understand is that one bud is more efficient than the multiple buds which is being present. So when we have got singular buds, it has got more stronger shoot that is being grown. So we get to see the multiple buds are not really that efficient. So we see that two is being right because single buds are more efficient rather than the multiple buds. If bad weather condition occurs, we directly see that the planted with single budded to have a better survival. As we have spoken over here, the single budded are more better to survive rather than the multiple. So three is also being wrong. Sugarcane can be cultivated using the tissue culture. That is also being wrong. Right. So we see that two, three, four are the right answer. So we see that one which is being wrong, and regarding all the statements two, three, four are being right. Moving to the next. In the context of India, which of the following is or considered to be as a practice of eco-friendly agriculture? What do we understand by the eco-friendly agriculture? And agriculture is being produced within which it is environmentally friendly at the same time. So what are the different methods which are being used? Let's just look at the first statement. The first statement is talking about crop diversification. One of the other types of crop method which we are having up, it is also called to be as crop rotation as well. Means at one point of time, one kind of a crop is being grown, another type B is being grown, C. When you have different crops which are being grown, the fertility of the soil is going to remain. So when the fertility is being more stable, it is one of the eco-friendly, because when the fertility of the soil is remaining up, less amount of fertilizer is being required. So it is one of the eco-friendly approaches. So crop diversification is right. Second, you have got legume intensification. Legumes are basically very good source of carbon sequestration. It is also one of the good sources to maintain the nitrogen of the soil as well. So when the nitrogen of the soil is able to replenish at a more faster pace, we get to see less amount of degradation will take place. So nitrogen will also remain. So that is also one of the eco-friendly methods. We have got tensor meter use. What do you remember tensiometer? It is one of the methods to measure the tension that is being present. An imbalance in the tension will make you understand what should be the amount of water absorption from the soil into the plants. So with this tensiometer, you can measure that what amount of tension is being present. With that particular measurement of the tension, we can understand the amount of irrigation that has to take place, the how much water is being required. It should be less or it should be more. So that tensiometer will help you to understand what amount of water is being required. So you can measure the irrigation pattern as well. Vertical farming, obviously less land use, more vertical. So we get to see that 1, 2, 3, 4, all of them are right, and that's an eco-friendly approach. Looking up at the last question, what we're having up, which of the following pairs is matching up? We have got the river, we have got the where a river is going and ending up. So one thing is that where Mekong is going up, Mekong is flowing from the Myanmar region and it is flowing towards the southeast of Asia. Andaman Sea is far south to it. So this particular statement is wrong. Thames is within the case of central England. It is going and ending up within the case of an English channel. Irish Sea is also being wrong. Volga starts up from the Russian region. It goes and meets with the Caspian Sea. Zambezi is one of the rivers which is flowing from the Central Africa and it dumps within the case of an Indian Ocean. So the right statement, what we're having is 3 and 4. So over here, we are having 3 and 4 is the right answer. So overall, what do we understand by this particular geography prelims is that there are almost 8 to 9 direct questions which has come up from the NCRT and from the current affairs reading as well. Almost 4 to 5 questions is requiring a certain kind of interpretative understanding. Means some kind of analysis should need to be done, some kind of a smart guesswork what's to be needed. And in this way, we have got 8 to 9 questions which are coming up directly from the geography. 5 is requiring and sort of an interpretation from the current affairs, interpretation from the knowledge of the economy survey. Some interpretation is required from the environmental aspect, and we are having this. So in my opinion, the difficulty level of geography in the year 2020 has somewhat between 3 out of 5. So over here, I wish you all the best. Just don't try to involve much into this prelims. Try to have an avoidance. Go for your mains preparation. That should be the best option right now at this. So what are the some of the other current affairs questions that I'll see you in the other session. Till